Hello, and welcome to this very special Penny Lane Pod episode in honor of International Women's Day. This is an incredible conversation I had with my good friend Swing Pony, and we discuss life and trading and life as a female trader. I feel so honored to have interviewed her, and I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. It's brought to you by Pennies Going in Raw and Last Bottle Wines.
The stock market is hotter than ever right now, and traders are taking advantage. But what does that mean for the people who still haven't started trading? The market can be a little intimidating at first, but you don't have to be alone in the learning experience. We at the Pennies Going in Raw podcast are here to help you. I'm Dan, and with my co-host Hugh Henney, we make the stock market a fun but informative experience for our listeners. We offer knowledge for all levels of traders, from beginners to those who do it full time. On PGIR, we discuss up-to-date news about the stock market and interview other traders who all started out just like us and made it big. You'll hear from Hugh and other multi-millionaire traders, founders and CEOs of companies, Fintwit superstars, and even professional athletes. Have you ever thought about investing your hard-earned cash but don't know where to start? Do you have money just sitting in your savings account collecting dust? We were all there once too. Listen to Pennies Going in Raw on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, Swing Pony. Welcome to the Penny Lane podcast.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we have a lot of mutual friends, and I think we were talking about it before we started recording, and the current Fintwit environment, like the overall sentiment is that it's so toxic and terrible and people are fighting. And I have not found that to be the case at all. And I think that might be because I just have
good
the best
people.
Friends. Yeah.
100%. No, I think I've been noticing that a lot lately, not necessarily because I follow the people who are in the midst of like the toxicity and all the drama, but it kind of just finds a way into your feed regardless.
Sure. Yeah.
But it definitely highlights more than ever like how important it is to sort of like curate your tribe and like make sure you have good company and people who are focused on the positive side of things, because I think natural human instinct is easy to go negative and sort of dive into all the stuff that doesn't matter, that's just sort of mentally consuming. But yeah, I mean, having good community, that's everything.
For sure.
And I think other note I want to say about that is I think that confirms that people are struggling with the market right now.
Totally.
Like when we are reaching peak toxicity and people constantly bashing each other and things of that nature, that means times are tough. That means a lot of people are struggling. They're not making money. They're losing money. So definitely more than ever, it's important to soak up the good vibes and embrace community.
Absolutely. I want to talk about our main mutual friend because I think you would enjoy that. And then I also want to ask you where you hang out during the day. So first we can talk about our friend and then go into that. Do you want to say it as the guest?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have so many friends. I'm not sure who you're talking about.
It's tough. It's tough. So many good friends.
So many good friends. Okay, we'll put Shark on a pedestal for a minute. No, Shark and I actually met for the first time officially when I had him on my Benzinga show.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes. So that was where we first crossed paths, and he is just hilarious, a good person. I call him grumpy old man that grumbles because he's kind of neurotic in a very pleasant way. But no, he's great. I've learned a lot from him. He was kind of around when I first dived into my options journey. And, he's seen me go from being the person who tries to swing weeklies and get burned by it a lot to finally making better decisions and evolving. And so, no, I adore Shark.
Yeah. He is a very big compliment I'm going to give him. He is a refreshingly honest person. And that is, I think that's hard to find in trading. But I really respect his honesty and transparency and attitude.
And what I think I really like about him as well is that he's not about flashy gains and trying to, sell people on that. He keeps it very real, like you said. And he's all about actually teaching people so that they can trade the right way. Not just here, take my alerts, do this, do that, make money, and like, let's post those 1,000% gains. Like, he's a very, he goes for sustainable, which I appreciate in this environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's honest on the green days and the red days, which I think takes balls. So.
It does take balls, and you're doing a great job of that yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I definitely, one more thing that we'll rave about with Shark is that you can tell a lot about people based on their community. And he has one of those like very strong communities where it's not just like, you and your mentor, you and someone you're paying. It's like actual friendships. And so I really admire that. I think there's a handful of people who do that really, really well on the Fintwit space. And he's definitely one of them.
So Friday was, you guys will all know if you follow me on Twitter. This will be released later, but Friday was my absolute worst trading day. So much so that when I finished trading, I just was crying hysterically.
Yeah.
And called Shark. He answered immediately and was on his way to go in and do something, and took time to really talk me off the ledge, which that's invaluable.
Absolutely.
In a friendship.
Absolutely. So, and I think because trading is very, very mentally draining, exhausting, defeating. On the other hand, it's all the opposite too, very rewarding, very satisfying. The amount of opportunity that's out there, but to have somebody that you can go to and be very honest on your best days, they keep you humble on your best days, on your worst days, they remind you that, these days are going to happen. And to have go-to people that you can express those things with, I think is absolutely vital, because mentally it can be a very challenging game.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Shark. Hope you enjoyed that. You had
do
to.
You like that, Shark? He's like, this is where I stop listening. I got what I need.
Right. Sign off. He doesn't listen. He doesn't listen at all to the podcast. So this will be his 10-minute,
for sure.
This is all he's ever going to listen to, except maybe his episode, which I'm sure
he's listened to.
Had to avoid.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you had a Benzinga show. I had a Benzinga show. Yeah. So but you don't anymore.
I don't anymore. No. It was a perfect.
Nor do I.
It was really lovely because. So some of my background, I started off as a small caps trader and an OTC trader. And this was mostly swing trading. Low risk, high reward, get in at the floor, scale in, scale out on the way up. And then the market evolved quite a bit. So, that's kind of around the time that I started my show. And my whole concept with the show was, it was called Mind Money Method. And the idea is to bring on different traders that are more seasoned, more experienced, have been doing this for years, and get simple but significant tips from them and their experiences in learning how they trade. I wanted it to be something where newer traders could listen and absorb and learn a lot, and experienced traders could listen and still absorb and learn a lot. Because with the way the market changed, it was really the perfect timing, because I got to hear from a lot of options traders. I got to hear from momentum traders, scalpers, day traders. And it was a really good time to soak all of that in, because the way that I was trading before, it wasn't working at the time. So it was a great way to just get different insights and nuggets of wisdom from different traders and kind of learn and add things to my toolbox as I continue to evolve with the market.
That's very much the premise of this show as well, except the only difference is I modeled this show after Armchair Expert. meaning like I wanted a long form interview, so it's not as a like condensed nugget thing. It's supposed to be like a meandering conversation that you can like pick up different things, but I think that that's actually maybe one of the weaknesses of the show, is that it's not necessarily a condensed package of this is the information. However, people get different things out of it, right? Like one person might learn something from one little piece. I don't know.
No, I like
enjoyed
the way
that.
you do it, because I think it takes the pressure off of like, give me what you got. It's
right.
like, let's have an all natural conversation. Let's see what comes out of it. We're going to go places we didn't plan for, because we didn't plan for any of this. And that's fun. That's refreshing. Doing what you're doing.
It's like a stream.
I love it.
Cool.
I love it.
Okay, so you had the Benzinga show. Well, when did you start trading?
Okay, so I started trading in, I would say, August of 2020. And
okay. Me too. Well, June of 2020. Okay. But same. Let's call it summer of 2020, and then we can be twins.
Summer 2020. Yeah. And basically what happened was I had a friend, it was COVID. I just moved to LA. And I was working remote with the same company from Texas. I moved from Texas. And he sent me a Robinhood link. And you know how they gamify everything, like sign up, you get one free stock. Which remind me, I do want to talk about this, the parallels to a casino versus trading, like the potential parallels. But because of that, I just signed up. I threw $50 in it. And funny enough, one day, I didn't even know what cash tags or tickers were. I just put the $50 in the account, and then I saw somebody post about Mara. And I was like,
ooh, love Mara. Yeah.
Sweet baby Mara.
I know. One of my favorite. Yes. One of my favorite stuff.
So I remember I ended up putting my $50 in there, and then it gapped up the next day. And this is when Mara was like around $3, $4. And it gapped up the next day, and just like any trader with a beginner's luck, I'm like, this is how it works? Like, this?
Yes.
So naturally, what I did next was I took like $5,000 and I put it in at what ended up being the top, like the next day.
Sure.
And then just over the next few days, watched it keep going down and down and down. And that sense of like anxiety and like, what have I done? Like, why did I do this? That moment of defeat kind of kicked in. And then what happened from there is I ended up reaching out to a friend who I knew traded, and he was like, you got to cut your losses. Like, you have to cut your losses. If you don't, you're not looking ahead at the other opportunities that are going to become available to you, because you were so mentally tied up in this. And so I didn't listen right away. I waited until I lost a little bit more money. And then I cut my losses. And that was my first aha moment of like, wait, like once you cut, you feel so much lighter. Like your energy is better. You really are open-minded. You are looking for new opportunities. The thought of cutting is way more intense and scary than actually going through with it.
Totally.
Once you go through with it, you're lighter, you're looking onward. So that was my big first lesson in doing that. And I ended up cutting Mara. And really what's interesting, I know you just interviewed Radio, who was my first mentor ever in trading. I, after that, was following a few of the big Fintwit names, and Radio put up something about like a free call mentorship. And I was like, okay, we'll give this a shot. It's probably some weird like Ponzi scheme, and she's going to sell me something at the end. But my thing with trading was like, it's not the technicals. It's not the charts. It's not the numbers that were appealing to me at first. So if somebody had tried to sell it to me in a technical way, I probably wouldn't have continued trading for much longer. But I got on the phone with Radio, and every single thing that he taught me was in some form of like life analogy or wisdom. And that was the moment where I was like, holy shit, like I've never thought about trading in this way. And I'm always a sucker for emotional intelligence and human psychology and all of that stuff. So that was the turning point for me where I saw everything very differently and I just like fell in love with the game. Yeah. So,
I love that. I love it.
From there, what I did was I continued with small caps. I got into OTCs for a bit. And then, as you know, you traded small caps too, right? Okay. So as you know, the market got a little bit tough once the IWM went into like a 5-year-long consolidation, it felt like.
Yeah.
So from there, after doing that for so long, I ended up pivoting to options. And that's my happy place now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So it's been a fun journey. I mean, learning all the time. But yeah, I think options are definitely, I can't tell you the last time I traded small caps or bought commons.
I love it. Yeah. I love that. I am also trading options, but I also really like it. I like it a lot more than small caps, but I've interviewed a few people who, I like to look for a good sign from the universe and feel like I'm really getting a sign from the universe that I need to transition from like day trading to building a portfolio, which I think is important. I interviewed a woman who was so incredibly impressive I always say her name wrong. It's Rhinocorn, I think is her name. She's not huge on Twitter. She's so impressive. And she kept talking about day trading to earn enough profit to invest. And she kept saying, bulletproof your account. And like, that has really stuck with me so much of like, if you bulletproof your account, you can't blow it up in one day by making a stupid trade.
Right.
And that's appealing. That's appealing to me because I can't like fully trust myself to not do that.
So
I haven't like proven it to myself, I think.
I have a lot of thoughts on day trading and the climate within the current market, right? So I think context is very important in the sense that I've seen veteran traders who've been doing this for like 20 plus years write on Twitter, I've been doing this for 20 years and this is one of the most challenging markets that I've ever traded. And that to me is incredibly refreshing because I think so many of us newer traders, relatively new, a year or 2 year, COVID traders, we could call ourselves. I think there is a lot of opportunity to go into like defeat and what am I doing wrong? And like, why can't I get this right? And it's so important to remember that like, even the big guys are struggling right now. Even they're like, what is happening? Like, where's this going to go? I don't know. So I think that's really important context for everyone to keep in mind when like being really hard on themselves. The other thing I will say, I know you mentioned, playing small caps and then going to day trading options. I used to love swinging. I still, if I could have a swing market, all about it. But the market just hasn't really allowed for much of that. Like if you look I posted a chart of the Qs the other day, like it looks like confetti. The candlesticks look like confetti. They're literally just floating. It looks awful, right? And so to think about that being the market that we're day trading, it's tricky. And I think right now, what it comes down to more than anything is, base hits, risk management, and compounding gains. Because this market can take everything from you really quickly if you don't get risk management on lock, because it's a tricky one. The other thing that I've noticed quite a bit is I actually had to catch myself because when I was doing, low risk, high reward, small caps trading at like very distinct floors and just writing profits on the way up, there was a sense of peace that came with that. Like, it's not too chaotic. I don't have to make a decision within seconds. I can preset my sell orders. It's very nice and easy. When you pivot to day trading options, those percentages, they move so fast for you or against you in either direction. One thing that I had to really take inventory of myself is when it starts to feel like a casino for me.
Yeah.
Like when my heart starts racing, when I am jumping into something without even having it calculated. Like when my body just goes through the motions and puts in an order and I haven't processed any of it, that's a problem. So I think a lot of people have pivoted to like a safer swing trading style to trying to force like scalping or day trading. And it's been a struggle because, things just move fast.
Yeah.
Things move really fast. And I've had to be very, very conscientious of, to be frank with you, like I've had family members who've had very, very bad gambling tendencies that have like created big problems. And so anytime I catch myself going into something like that, whether it's like over trading, getting emotional, like, am I having a bad day because I traded poorly and now it's reflecting everything else in my life? Like my interactions with my friends and family are different because I had a bad trading day. You have to keep in mind anything that gives you like casino style, possibly like addiction, obsessive tendencies, and you kind of have to nip it in the bud before that becomes a norm.
Absolutely.
And like revenge trading. I mean, revenge trading is, I used to think, how can somebody go to a casino and blow 50 grand? How could they possibly do that when it's only 50 grand that they have? Like, what? And then you start trading and you realize, like, have you ever gotten to that place where you've lost a certain amount of money and then like your rules and your plan and everything, it just goes out the window and suddenly you were doing things that are just insane. Like you were putting a lot of money on the line. You're trying to get it all back. Those are the moments where you have to catch yourself and you have to stop yourself because that's how you blow up an account.
Totally.
And I love what you're doing because I know you're trying to have a certain amount. Like if I lose this much, I'm done for the day.
Then I have to stop. Yeah.
Because I found that my threshold, like once I lose a certain amount, if I lose more, that's when I know myself and I could get into a reckless amount of trading to try to make it up. And then you could go from losing $500 to losing $5,000 just because.
Like so easy. So easy. It's so easy to do. And it's like almost like an animal instinct kind of takes, if I was able to like remove myself from my body and watch what I was doing, I'd be like,
100%.
Like you stop. 100%. But like, you can't,
you're not being rational in that moment, right? And you know that your emotions are kicking in, you're being reactive. I mean, it's the same thing as a casino. All you have to your name is 50 grand and suddenly you're down 15,000 and you're like, well, I need to get that back. So I'm willing to risk the 35K I have left to do that. And then you walk out with zero,
Yep.
Irrational exuberance?
When it comes to killer wine at drastically low prices,
30 to 70% off retail and free shipping.
We live for that here at Last Bottle Wines. Whether you went long or short on GameStop, you'll need a glass of something terrifically tasty.
And we've got the goods.
Last Bottle is a daily wine site based in Napa, California.
One wine every day.
At Black Swan event prices.
Usually 30 to 70% off.
Until poof, it's gone. Whether you're a pound-the-table type,
think ultra-crisp, quaffable Sauvignon Blanc,
or a dividend aristocrat,
Burgundy, or Napa Cab,
there simply is no better place to buy wine on the web.
And they always have free shipping.
Last Bottle has a deal just for Penny Lane listeners. Use promo code PENNY,
That's PENNY.
to save 10% off your next order with Last Bottle.
The code is good for one order and one order only, and it expires March 11th, 2022.
So head over to lastbottlewines.com today. That's lastbottlewines.com.
I think I talked about on the podcast how I stopped drinking so that I could like learn, think or swim really, and have better control over my emotions during the day. Like I wasn't as anxious and could like think clearly and everything. And there's so many parallels like with my own journey with drinking of making rules, right? Of like, oh, well, I will only drink on these days or have, X amount of drinks, or I'll only drink this. Like, I struggled for 20 years with like, how do I put up guardrails around my drinking to make it something I can control? And I failed like again and again and again. And, I'm still struggling with that some. But there are so many parallels between that and trading of like, you go into trading and it's like you're at a buffet in Las Vegas, right? You have you can do literally anything. And like you do a little bit of this and that tastes good. And then a little bit of this and that tastes good. And you're sort of all over the place. And then you have to go on kind of like an elimination diet of like, okay, well, I can't do this. This is a rule. Like I'm not going to eat the mashed potatoes anymore. Or like, this, so then you like get it down, and try to put up guardrails around something that's uncontrollable and make it controllable. And I think about that. I just think about this parallel so often, and like how you do make it so that at the casino, instead of being the gambler, you're more like the house of like, how can I make this in my favor so that it's just more advantageous. Anyway, I don't know if that really made a lot of sense.
No, it does make sense.
But
No, it absolutely does. And I think, you mentioned drinking. I think there's a lot of parallels there too, because, I know I don't drink nearly as much as I used to. I love my mental clarity way too much, and this takes away from it. But back when I did used to drink, I always found like 3 drinks is a sweet spot. Okay? If I have 3, I'm having a good time, I'm playful, I'm fun, everything's great. After a certain point, it's a very fine line between a good time and a sloppy mess where you wake up the next morning, how did I get home last night? What did I do last night? What did I say last night? In the sense of like shame and anxiety and the things that don't feel good that come with it. And I think that is sort of like the revenge trading thing, and like stopping at, I lost $500. I'm done for the day. Because once you maybe cross over whatever your number is, that's when you could go into absolute recklessness. Like if I lose $1,000, if I lose $2,000, there's so many parallels.
That's exactly the same. Exactly the same. And then the feeling of like shame and regret is the same. Like waking up the next morning and being like, oh, I like told a secret or said something to my friend that I didn't want to say.
It's not a good feeling.
It's a bad feeling. It's a bad feeling.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really think, and look, here's the bottom line. We're all human. We're going to have our slip ups. We're going to have our good days. We're going to have our bad days. The most important thing, I think, is just having the awareness, like knowing this is my trigger. When this happens, I tend to react like this. Make note of it. Like you can't, I think a lot of traders tend to outrun what their issues are by not confronting them.
Absolutely.
And that,
absolutely.
If we want to give it another parallel, it's sort of like, well, first of all, one of my favorite things to say is that the get rich quick mindset leads to go broke quick execution, right? Because
love that.
I think a lot of times we, this is again where you have to keep in mind the casino tendencies, right? You put money in a slot machine, your $100, it'll go to 103, and then it'll go to 97, and then it'll go to 115, and then it'll go to 85. You have little like ups and downs along the way that keep you engaged and keep you looped in. So you have to be mindful of, you know, there are dopamine hits coming in every time you see green. And you absolutely have to be mindful of how that affects your trading. But the other thing that I was going to say is it's sort of like, you know, people that want a fad diet, a crash diet. Like, I have a wedding next week. I want to do a all liquid with cayenne pepper and lemon, something that's gonna like
lemons and cayenne
obliterate my stomach because I want it quick and I don't want to do it the sustainable way, which could actually be a fun, enjoyable lifestyle, you know? And then, you know, I've gone through fitness coaching and nutrition training, and I weigh everything with a scale and I log on my FitnessPal. So like, this is my language, but there are times where, you know, the scale's not moving or it's going in the wrong direction. And before I did all this, I was like, well, I don't know why this is happening. Like, I'm doing everything right. Are you though? Like, you know, am I sitting down most of the day? Am I snacking a whole lot? Am I logging, but I'm not taking inventory of all the things I'm actually like, oh, this is only a few pieces here, a few pieces there.
Sure. I mean, we've all been there on all kind of diets. I've done that myself. I'll be like, I did Weight Watchers for years, and would go and like get on the scale and not have lost any weight and been like, well, I did everything right except for like that, you know, like piece of pizza that I ate that I decided not to log. Or
the one with the stuffed crust and the cider ranch to dip in.
That didn't count. It didn't count because I had a couple drinks, you know, 100%. Or like whatever like justification I was going to use.
100%. And so I think that's, you know, for anyone struggling, I think that's the first thing to pay attention to is, are you genuinely taking inventory of what's going wrong? Like, actually sit down and look at your trades each day. Are there common errors that continue to pop up? Is it something different each time? Until you can actually like face those things and define them, you're just going to keep outrunning your problems. And then they're going to catch up and you're going to be like, I don't know what happened. But internally, you know that you're probably not, you know, look, the market's insane right now. The market is so whack right now. Nobody is saying that you need to know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't need to know what's going to happen in the market to make money. But you do manage your own risk management. You do have your own game plan that is supposed to protect you from the absolute uncertainty that the market is. And so I think just sitting down and really facing those things and trying to address them is key.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I find myself doing that. Even, I mean, I do it all the time. Like, I really struggle with over trading, and will like go in my mind and be like, well, maybe this doesn't count as another trade because it's like the same option. Or, you know, I'll be like, I'm going to get stopped out of this trade and then be like, but the trade's still valid, so I'm going to go back in, but I'm only going to count it as the one trade. Like, insane things.
So over trading was my biggest issue. 110%. And it's still, the funny thing is we talk about like addiction and things like that too. If you think about like AA, people are still going to meetings 20 years down the line. There's a reason for that. Like, we are still human. We do still have slip ups. It's not like your favorite trader that you admire so much is not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Right. But the goal is like, even when you slip up and have things like that, don't let it turn into a spiral. Like, you know, let it be, I had a bad day and I'm not going to let that carry into the next day. Or I had a good day and I'm not going to let that overconfidence like go into what happens next. But over trading is an interesting one, because I think it sort of needs to be like your closet. You know how some people have the rule, like, I can't buy anything new until I like get rid of one thing. Like, it has to be a swap.
Yeah.
something that I actually have started implementing, and I'm going to dive into like even more intensely this week, is sort of like, I also tend to overtrade when I'm in front of the screen for too long. So I've sort of determined that like my peak trading hours are, let me think, in Eastern time. So like 10 to 12:30 Eastern is a really strong window for me.
Yes.
And then the last 2 trading hours of the day are a very strong window for me. Anytime I overstay my visit and make it a whole day affair, I'm overtrading. I'm losing mental capital, which is sometimes more important than the financial aspect of it. And it's just not productive. So I think one of the helpful things to cut down on overtrading too is to like define a time to take a break in between. Like, nothing good happens in this window. I'm looking for things to do just to keep myself occupied. Like, you shouldn't be seeking out a trade just because. Like, ideally a beautiful setup should come and you're like, that's my trade, I'm going to take it. And something that I think about often that kind of helps reel me in a little bit is if you're over trading, you're not, God, how did I word it? It was, you're not taking ideal setups if you're over trading, because there's no way there can be this many setups that are just perfect for you and for your trading plan and things of that nature. So when I think about that, I'm like, okay, you don't want to be the person that's just trading to trade. Like, if you explain this to your mentor, what would you say? Like, do you have a valid reason that you took this trade? Like, could you actually sit there and be like, this is why I took it, this was my entry, or is it just kind of like, I was bored, my fingers just put the order in, So I think definitely there's a lot of mindfulness that goes into it. And it's a hard habit to break, but I think as with any rule, you sort of start to realize once you start following it, you get rewarded for it. And that can kind of get the momentum going a little bit.
Yeah, in a positive way. To go kind of full circle back into Shark, I had him on the podcast and didn't know him at all. Just people were like begging me to have him on, and I didn't know anything about options. And my co-host bailed on me an hour before the show, and I freaked out and like was all over. I'm in the MTA Discord, and I was like, I need anyone with options to like help me co-host the show, because he's a big deal. Like, I didn't know anything about him except like he had a lot of Twitter followers, and I mean, I've never been more scared to go into an interview. I couldn't get anyone to help me. And I was like, well, I'm just going to have to wing this. And got on that episode, and literally we just talked about like the general philosophy behind trading. And he is so like zen about it, and it reminds me a lot of this conversation that we're having. It's one of my favorite episodes. But it's like interesting hearing you talk and knowing what good friends you are with him.
That's why we'll all probably get along.
Like, it's like my favorite conversation to have, of just like, and I think the name of the episode was like parallels between trading and life, or trading is life. It's the same.
And it exposes your strengths and your weaknesses. And so it's one big fat mirror to everything that you're good at, everything that you're not great at. It's really amazing the way those things show up. Like, are you non-committal? Are you indecisive? Do you live in fear? All of those things are going to show up in how you trade, which is why the fun thing for me is like when you work on something in real life, or whether you work on it in trading, those things are going to affect each other. How you do anything is how you do everything. So, you know, the more
Totally.
you work on yourself in your trading discipline, the more it's likely to show up in other areas of life. And I freaking love that
Totally.
so much.
The better like my life is going, the better my trading is going. And the better my trading is going, the better my life is going. And you know how easy it is to see the flaws in someone else's trading system, but not see them in your own?
Well, sorry to interrupt you. It's just like when somebody comes and they tell you about like this relationship, like, he's never home, we don't even talk, he doesn't take me anywhere, we have nothing in common, blah, blah, blah. But they're still in it, or they like express all of these red flags, and as the outsider, you're a good friend, right? So you're not just like dump his ass, like get rid of him. You try to kind of guide and whatever, but objectively, you're like, this isn't gonna work. Like, you're a gem. Yeah, get out of there and go do your thing. Like, you're fine. This isn't gonna work. I know you're gonna be okay once you leave it. Objectively, other people can easily pinpoint things and shift you into the right direction. But until you're ready to do those things, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, totally. I say on the podcast all the time, you can be told the same thing 100 times, but maybe you hear it the 101st time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you know, sort of going back to the parallels with like food and nutrition and like that regimen, I think a lot of it is also setting up your environment in a way that is helpful to you. If I have pizza and Pop-Tarts in the house, I'm going in. I am eating pizza and Pop-Tarts. Now, if I don't have those things in the house, it's going to be a little bit more work for me to get that. I still might, but it's no longer a part of my environmental design where I'm just naturally going to reach for it, right? So that's where I like to set some boundaries in trading. Like, I like to look at maybe 3 to 5 tickers the night before. I know that I tend to overtrade. What makes me overtrade? Going in without a plan. Having, you know, I have one like master watch list of like 70 tickers. Having all of that at my disposal and just like scanning through and like, oh, I'll take this, I'll take that. You're going to overtrade. So, you know, I like to set up my environment by planning the night before. I look at 3 to 5 really strong tickers. I'll put my levels on there. I'll go ahead and look at the options chains, what has the most liquidity, what looks viable. And then that way, when I'm trading the next day, you know, I have my alerts set. If something hits, then I'm jumping into a trade. I'm not just freeballing it and taking whatever's out there. The other thing, again, like I said, is trading during my strongest hours. Like, if I know that most of my money is made in this window and most of my money is lost in this just because I didn't lock profit and I hung around and, you know, there's no interesting trade, so I'm taking very mediocre setups, then I know that I need to tweak my environment. I need to be available for these hours. I need to step up. I need to take a break. If I want to come back for power hour, then I can, because there are better setups there. And this, again, this applies to so many different things, even like your Twitter feed. I think you have to be very, very, very mindful of what kind of information that you're consuming. You know, if you're susceptible to FOMO and you have all of these Twitter accounts, you follow 1,000 different accounts and they're all posting like gains nonstop, or they all have a million different styles of trading, and that's keeping you from honing in on your style because you want to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. You know, you have to clean up your environment. You have to either mute some of those accounts, you have to unfollow some of those accounts, but you basically just want to position yourself in a way that, you know, that slice of pizza just isn't as accessible, because you know yourself, you know what you're prone to doing. So if you can, you know, raise awareness and define those things, and you can sort of clean up your environment a little bit better to where you're not as triggered or likely to do the things that damage you and report.
That was a Lego.
I love it.
And I do find that I trade my absolute best when it is just me and the screen. No, I mean, because alerts, I will question myself, right? And I'll say, well, maybe they know better than me. And I will jump into a trade that, thank you, sweetheart, that I wasn't going to. I'll look at a chart that wasn't on my watch list, and then I'll think, well, that is a good setup. And then I'll take the trade, and then I'll hold for longer because it wasn't in my plan. And that is when I take my biggest losses.
Huge awareness. And I've had that issue in the past myself. Sometimes you like to discredit yourself and say like, oh, maybe my setup, like this trader who I really like, love and admire and does a great job alerted this. So maybe I should pivot from what I had going and take what they alerted. But the goal in all of this is to build trust with yourself, right? The more that you do that, the more that you build better intuition, you take the plays, you don't doubt yourself. And I have a theory on like trading groups and discords and things of that nature. I think they are absolutely amazing as long as you are learning while you're in them. So the goal of being in any paid room is I should be able to take the knowledge that I'm getting from this and eventually apply it to my own trades. If that's not what's happening, if you're taking alert after alert after alert and you have no idea why, you're setting yourself back. And,
totally.
There are some really great discords that do weave in education. And I think it's on you to kind of decide like what you want to take away from that. But I myself have found that like sometimes, before if I would lean in too much into those, I wouldn't work on finessing and honing in on my own style. And I do a lot better, even friends and people I trust and I know are great. I have to put it all on mute sometimes because I'm like, when it's me against my plays, I know what I'm doing. There's no distraction. Yeah. I thrive like this. So there's no reason for me to have the noise come up and kind of throw me off my own game when I'm doing great.
Yeah.
No, I think you're spot on with that. And I think, like I said, a lot of traders feel like, oh, I am newer. I still need to like follow someone's lead. I still need to do that. It's all great for a certain period of time, but you also have to figure out how to build that trust in yourself, whether it's, you want to start with a small account or you want to paper trade an account. But the goal is to build trust in yourself so that you can take those plays without relying on anyone. Always.
Yeah. And then, I love like living and dying by my own choices.
Yes.
If I take a trade and it's red, I'm fine with it because it was my idea and I had justification. If I take someone else's trade and it's red, I'm pissed.
Are you?
Like pissed at me, not
for
at
taking
them.
Their trade, right?
Yeah. I'm just like, better. Than to do that, and then I get so pissed that the rest of my day is like off the rails because I'm like,
I don't have to do that.
I don't need to take someone else's trade. I know how to trade.
Yeah, exactly. And that's great. Like, you know how to trade. What more do you like? Acknowledging that it's the noise from other people that you're allowing in, kind of holding you back sometimes is like, that's actually empowering. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I just need to do it.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, that's everything, isn't it? I know what I need to do. I just need to do it. But it takes time. It's all a constant tweaking, assess and finesse. Just have the awareness and chip away at things. Absolutely.
For sure. Well, I think that is kind of a beautiful place to end this podcast. You are amazing and such a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
And I thoroughly enjoyed this.
I did too. And like I said, I've told you this before, but I think like your your transparency is very, very important in this space, and it's very endearing and it's very brave, because it is hard to, post losses or post, to have it happen and to explain and have that accountability to other people, because it's nice for people to see that, is what I'm getting at. Because what we need to keep in mind is that all of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Fintwit itself, is essentially a highlight reel for the most part. So the same stunning, beautiful women I see on Instagram who have 5 filters on, who have picture perfect photographers capturing their moments, like the 500%, 1000% gainers that you're seeing on Fintwit every day are no different. Totally. It's the same exact thing. And I wish more than anything, like for anybody who sees that and genuinely gets bogged down by it, or you may think you're not. Sometimes, like scrolling through other people's highlight reels on Instagram or whatever, you may think you're not affected by it. You are. Somewhere deep in there, it is making you doubt yourself, making you think you're not good enough, making you think that everyone else is thriving and you're not. And you have to remember that, like, for every 500% gain you see, there are many, 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 many more losses that are not coming to light. So I love that you're keeping it human, you're keeping it real, because I think these are conversations that need to be had. And I think nobody's perfect. I mean, this is ups and downs, It's a trading game.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And I hope you come back 10 more times.
I would love to.
Please.
You know what? I think we should do one with me, you, Champagne Shark, and Sharky Boy himself.
Yeah. Maybe a live one.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be fun on like a Friday night.
Yeah. Maybe a Spaces even.
I would love that. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah. Where just we can talk and other people can just type.
I love it. I love it.
Cool.
All right. Well,
All
thank you for having me.
You.
Hi, guys. We are coming to the end of our last bottle wine promo. As a reminder, use the code PENNY and get 10% off your order. If you like wine, this is a no-brainer. The wine is incredible. It's gone through a rigorous process, making sure that it tastes good, it's a good value, it's the lowest price you'll find on the internet. And with code PENNY, you get an additional 10% off your order for one time. So make sure you use that before March 11th. Again, Last Bottle Wines.
Thank you so much to our producer Joel Edwards and Chesley Lowe for the banjo music.
By accessing this podcast, you acknowledge that the Penny Lane podcast makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional or financial advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, the Penny Lane podcast does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. The third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of the Penny Lane podcast. The Penny Lane podcast assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with applicable laws of such materials and or links referenced herein.